Welcome to the Connecting Cookeville podcast, where we spotlight business owners, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and local influencers. It's our hope this podcast enables you to feel the pulse of what makes our community great.
Hey, Cookeville. It's good to have you back. Thanks for joining us on the Connecting Cookeville podcast this week. I am your host, Amber Flynn Jared, and this is episode 34. As always, joining me, the podcast co-host, seared into the heart of Cookeville.
Ooh, did you see what she did there?
That was
like
really
that?
good.
Yeah.
She always
Zach Buckner. I didn't actually say
Oh, it's not important.
Zach Buckner.
No, she always has these amazing puns, and I always think I know where she's going to go, but she just switches it up.
Sometimes they're amazing. Most of the time they're
Yeah, you've gotten a couple that were weird. But
Yeah.
Can we just talk about the fact that
what is sitting in front of us?
Once again, I would like to say that I'm very excited about our guest today.
I'm really excited
I've
about.
I've not been disappointed.
No.
But I mean, all of our other guests were cool, but no one brought a steak. Grill Master McD is in the house, y'all.
I hear all this swag talk, and when I'm listening to the podcast, and I was like, what am I going to do? You know? So I brought you a little something.
I mean,
no one has brought steak.
Setting the bar.
Yeah, there is the bar
to a whole nother level.
Yeah, it's
like, I don't even know what our next guests are going to do.
No, there's nothing they can do.
I mean, to top steak. So, hey, future Connecting Cookeville co-guests.
Yes, yeah. And people.
Go ahead and be thinking now what you're going to bring Zach and I.
Because steak.
Steak.
Because steak.
Potatoes. Green beans.
You know how everybody talks about, that's the meat and potatoes of our podcast? This is literally the meat and potatoes
of our podcast. That's so good.
This is amazing. So when are we going to eat this? Or
I'm totally going to eat it. I was just going to let the two of you talk amongst yourselves.
So you get to eat first.
I'm going to have lunch.
What?
Yeah. So anyway, go ahead.
So, no, okay.
Introduce
while she's doing
our
that,
guest.
Grill Master McD is here. Thank you for being on the show.
Oh,
seriously, gracious. So awesome that you're on the show. And wow, there's a lot to talk about. We've got to condense it into a short period of time. So let's get first things first. Let's talk about how in the world you wound up in Cookeville. How did that happen? Tell us your story. What brought you here to this point?
It was a cold and blustery day in April when I was born. No, really, it was a quick story. 5 days old, I got adopted and brought to Cookeville.
5 days old?
Yeah. My father was a professor.
Okay.
And Mom was working as a secretary over at Tech, and they decided they wanted to have another child, and I was the lucky.
You were the guy.
I won the lottery.
You did.
And really, yeah.
I mean, so Tech, the Tech connection continues.
It does.
So your mom and dad, both at Tech. When did you go to school, elementary school, high school, all the way through here in Putnam County?
All the way. It was Sycamore. I started in kindergarten. Miss Ray.
Let's go.
Moved on over to Jerry Whitson, go Wildcats. And then, the junior high, the high school.
Okay, I'm going to have to interrupt you. I'm eating this steak. This is...
Your co-host went silent.
Uh-huh. Which is always a good sign, right?
We'll see.
Oh, my gosh.
You'll have to watch the podcast this time.
Oh.
Have you told
That's
people?
true.
No.
We haven't.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my
But
gosh.
thank you for doing that.
Sure.
So, we are actually doing this podcast.
Yeah.
Not only with the audio this time. Sorry.
We now have a listenership and a viewership.
Right.
We're full of ships.
All
on
the
this
ships.
ship.
Yeah, we're bringing video to you so you can actually see how amazing this steak is.
I'm in a coma right now.
This is really...
Okay.
What kind of steak is this?
This is a ribeye.
Which is my favorite kind of steak.
I bought it at a local market, but I do have some steak props and use my world championship rub on it. So you're getting a little bit of different flavors.
That is the most delicious steak I think I've ever eaten.
And I'm not even making that up. Like,
I'm
I
really
feel
not.
like I would need to say that.
Yeah, no, we're not obligated to
for
say
the
any
podcast,
of these things.
but it really is.
It's Grandma's iron skillet that cooked.
That's the deal.
secret.
That's the deal.
It is.
And I'm imagining a little bit of butter.
Duck fat and butter.
Duck fat. Holy. Because,
Holy
duck
fat.
Right.
Yes. I mean, I have duck fat.
I'll tell you that. Here's a little just perspective. So I thought I had gotten pretty good. I've been doing the iron skillet thing, game changer, for a few years. And so I thought I'd been doing pretty well at steak. And now I'm like,
now you realize not so much.
I don't know. This is amazing.
This is going to be difficult for me. I'm going to have to...
The seasoning is stupid. So, first of all, shameless plug. Where in the world can I get this seasoning?
You can't.
I can't get the seasoning. Well, now that my dreams are shattered, I'm gonna.
You're looking at the source.
Okay,
All
so
right,
it's proprietary.
Let's go back. Let's
Good.
go back to you.
Okay, yes.
Kind of talk about. I mean, I know I love your story because it's a whole. I went around the world and came back to my roots in Cookeville, and it's amazing to me how what your love of cooking and foodie and all of that, it's interwoven throughout your whole entire life.
I think it's through everybody's life, but you ever hear of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? You know, food, water, shelter. Well, food's first. We always listed
That's
first.
right.
That's where our passions lie, and a lot of people find that love and that passion in food when we are able to enjoy it and not be rushed and that type of thing. So following my grandmother and my mother and my father. My grandmother's got more recipes in Southern living than she's got fingers and toes. But, you know, I've got that family connection, but there is one Cookeville family that has run through a lot of different cooking and community efforts, and that's the Stones.
Yes.
How fitting.
Yeah. And 7 years old in Sherwood, I said, Mom, Dad, I want a motorcycle. And they said, well, go earn the money for it. Calling a bluff, and I got a paper route. So I wound up riding my bike on that paper route, and sure enough, I started breathing deeper, slowed my bike down, and noticed a fellow was cooking outside, and it was Tony. And he was doing some prep or something for a cook. And I went up and had a Norman Rockwell moment, literally. He couldn't be painted any better. I tugged on his pet's leg. I said, what you doing, mister? And he took 20, 30 minutes and told me, and then it started from there.
Oh, my goodness.
And so I'm 46 now, so I'm not going to do the math, but that's a lot of numbers. And sure enough, I've been cooking that along. Now, whether it's me watching my mom in the kitchen growing up or starting meals before they got home from work when I got done with the paper route, and that was hamburger patties and mixed vegetables out of a can.
Sure.
But that's not
But
bad. If
still,
you want to
absolutely.
And it's come all the way up, and I've gotten some. I even this year was lucky enough to coach the World Food Dessert Champion.
Which is the job I want when I grow up.
Wow.
I mean,
and she
coaching.
won with apple pie, and we talked about sticking to our roots, and she performed and does what she does best and rocked the world, and now she's competing on the world's largest stage in April, and I just learned I'm going to be the MC of the World Food Championship,
Oh my
goodness.
which will have all kinds of different broadcasts and all kinds of different things going on. So
Did you ever imagine? I mean, would you have ever in a million years?
I'm a cookful guy who just likes to cook. I'm just a guy.
Yeah.
But you follow the
And here you
passion,
go.
and you know, it
the
really
doors start to open up.
That is incredible. Absolutely incredible. What is the coolest experience that you've had, you know, in your travels with food? What kind of is one of those things that stands out as one of the most memorable?
I've got to go back to teaching and follow that Tony Stone route. And I had that moment. There was that aha moment.
Yeah.
And again, we say Norman Rockwell, but this is literally painted in some of his paintings. Two brothers and a sister walk up to me in Minnesota, and I'm setting up on my barbecue tour maybe 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And their parents are standing off maybe 20 feet away. And the kids come up and they say, sir, we understand you cook steak. Would you mind taking a few minutes and give us some pointers? We want to compete. And I looked at their parents. I said, how much time you got? And they said, as much as you'll give them.
Wow.
And 4.5 hours later, I went through a whole process. We walked into the store, and two of them were in Boy Scout uniforms, and the daughter was in a prim and proper dress. It was just surreal.
The whole thing. You could have made it up.
Like, is this being videoed somewhere? Somebody's paying attention here.
Wow.
But then they went off and won some junior world championships in steak.
Oh, wow.
The most rewarding part of this was the youngest son.
This is so good. I can't.
I'm not going to hold you back.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Back to you.
The youngest son was very introverted, and because he got in that competitive environment and he had success, he opened up. And the mother, a year later, I saw her again, and we remain friends to this day.
Wow.
But they actually said that he opened up because of competition cooking. Who knew?
Yeah.
And it was just because Tony had done it with me, and I saw the opportunity to pay
Inherently,
it
you
forward
knew.
and pay it back.
Yeah.
And that was the way it was ingrained in me to teach.
That is incredible.
Wow.
That's so incredible. What's kind of the toughest part of what you encounter? I mean, what do you find the hardest thing to do about what you do?
Boy, I'm sort of
Or
living
is there one?
I think I'm living a dream, but I have been on the road for 7 years.
Right.
And when you hear about, we're near Nashville, so I compare it to country music. You hear about these tours with artists and stuff. And the first 3 years, I was on the road 10 straight months.
Gosh.
And I was the one driving. I was my own roadie. I was the setup, the breakdown. And then I got to run the Sam's Club, the National Pro Barbecue Tour.
Right.
And that's the world's largest barbecue
Yes.
contest. And we traveled around. So we had some roadies and some trucks. And
Wow.
stuff.
So at that moment, you were like, okay, I can get used to this. This is okay.
Well, it
You can
is.
breathe a little bit. Yeah.
It is, but you know what? Now I'm married. I got married in
Yeah,
January.
congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shout out to Stevie, your
Oh, boy, I
beautiful
tell you,
wife.
46 years it took me to find her, but I'm not letting go. I don't care what
Smart man.
I don't care what the judge says.
Smart man.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
That's
Yeah.
incredible.
She's wonderful, and so I'm enjoying not going out on tour
Right.
this year and teaching classes and
Yeah.
doing some things locally.
So where do you teach typically, or how does that look?
Literally, I just left the construction crew at the house, and we have 2 cooking setups at the house, outdoors, indoors.
Whoa.
It's going to be fun, and I've even done cooking classes out on the family farm.
Yeah.
Thing as big as 50. I think we had 55 people for WCTE.
Right.
What Becky McGrew was doing with them.
Right. Oh,
I
yeah.
helped
Yeah.
teach a class just to bring in the Todds, which
Right.
were
Yes.
the Bluegrass Underground group.
Right, right.
So we were doing a bunch of things like that.
Yeah, yeah. That
That's
is too
super
cool.
fun.
It-
Oh my
it is.
gosh.
I'm living the last.
That's awesome. That is awesome. That's awesome.
So if you're going to be teaching classes here locally, so that's something that people could, like, if they hear us talking about this steak and they know
I really
that
wanna
there's
learn how to
this
cook a
not
steak.
up to par. So Zach wants to sign up
Actually
for
learn. Yeah.
one of your classes, and you already know I'm going to be there
Right.
with a glass of Pinot Noir to enjoy this. So what's that going to look like? What kind of things are you going to offer?
Absolutely. On Facebook will be where it'll be announced mostly for the local
Okay.
situation. But Fit Griller is my website.
Got it.
And that's an easy place to go to find out what the goings on will be. But I want to compare it, and we did a pilot with WCTE down at Calf Killer. And
I saw
those
that.
fellas
So
were
cool.
so
Very cool.
fantastic.
It was the coolest thing.
It is, and it's fun. And so it's going to be live fire cooking. Not just this is me on a grill, but how can I go straight onto the coals with stuff? And you know, we actually did 14 fans around a campfire and
It was
created
the
a 2-story
coolest
fire
thing.
NATO.
Yeah.
And, I had to cook on shovels and was burning my hands because it was so hot. I
It was
mean,
incredible,
it was really.
though. The shovel thing, like, ever since I probably saw that, I don't know, 6 months ago. I don't even remember where I ran across it, but I saw it and I was like, well, I'm going to definitely try cooking on a shovel now. That is the coolest thing I've probably ever seen.
It is absolutely.
And who doesn't have a
fantastic.
shovel, you know?
That's pretty cool.
It's neat.
Well, one of the things that we like to kind of do is a little bit of the walking down memory lane, and we've had our mouths full, you know, here,
Yes,
and
and we'll continue to.
so we bounced around a little bit. But one story that I have heard you tell that I think is super cool about, you know, kids finding their passion, and then, you know, not necessarily when you're a kid, you know, you may not think, oh, I'm gonna be a grill master and, you know, travel on the barbecue tour when I grow up. I mean, you may not even know that that's a thing. But tell us about when you were in high school, the trip that you got selected to go on, and kind of how you were maybe re-engaged with your passion there.
I got chicken skins, what we call it.
Chicken skin, I like that better.
But, you know, the Cookeville has a way of cultivating, and it's been an amazing thing. Follow your love, follow your passion. I heard that growing up. My teachers definitely play a part, and I think Cookeville has some of the best teachers around.
That's right.
The Putnam
Amen.
County area, the Upper Cumberland.
Amen.
It really is something where people still care, and there's a community. And,
It really is.
And even I want to tip my hat to Ricky, you know, as mayor, and you know, they brought a lot of that back.
Absolutely.
And kept it ingrained. But what we did was, I had that paper route. And the easiest way to explain it was I was folding papers and reading the stories as I fold. So I'm rubber banding and throwing them in the floorboard and getting ready for delivery. And I'm reading the article, and it's talking about this scholarship, and they would take applications, and it would be traveling from Gdańsk, Poland, all the way to the southern tip of South America. United Nations was going to be the sponsor, and it winds up the Cookeville contingent. You know, we actually had 10 Americans, 10 Polish students, and 10 Russian students. The Russians and Polish had 10,000 people apply, and the Baranowskis. Barron and Associates.
Yeah.
And the father, he was still alive at the time, and we went through interviews, and the parents saw so much merit in it, they asked, how can we, there's 2 scholarships, how can we have our child go? And, you know, there's a bunch of people still in this community that went on this trip. White Squall, the movie, it ultimately is that movie where that's set in the 50s and we're in the 80s. But we were responsible for a share in how the Russians and Americans could get along.
Wow.
And it was an experiment. Of
Well, yeah,
sort
the
of
time, the political climate then was, pretty touchy.
And here's you say that, and not Cuban Missile Crisis type, but when the first country broke away from Russia, there was an Estonian, and it was Estonia that broke away.
Oh, wow.
There was an Estonian on board the boat. And so we went through we got word that it had happened, and so we were making sure nothing was going to.
Oh my gosh!
It was PR and the whole press before we had all this social media stuff.
Right.
But we had a film crew on board the boat and traveled 10,000 miles under sail, 3 to 5 hours of sleep a night. Went to school on board the boat and actually worked the boat, climbing 100. I say boat. It's 154 foot long, 104 foot tall masts. How I remember that 30 years later, I have no idea.
Obviously had an impact on you.
It did.
I mean,
that's incredible.
But food-wise, bringing it all full circle, I got to see everything from coming through the Kiel Canal and being in England and the Canary Islands, the Madeira Islands, Madeira wine. It was legal at that point. Coming across, and then we get down to Argentina. And, Brazil and Argentina, they've got some storied cooking on swords and fun stuff there. But we got taken out to a ranch, a couple of us, and we got to witness firsthand at this picnic table. They didn't have a green and red button. You didn't flip it, but the cooking and the passion and the love everywhere you went, and it starts to affect what your mindset is. But you also see society too. Yeah. And it was a really educational opportunity. But the bonds and the friendships, it is now the 30th anniversary this year. They're actually getting and renting the same boat, and the crews are getting back together, those that can make it, and are going back out on it.
So how many in that crew sort of stuck with cooking and stuck with a love for food and that kind of thing? I mean, did the majority of them basically
not
that?
Many, because
Really?
I'll give the story on board the boat. We were fishing. The only fish we ever caught out of 10,000 miles was a shark. And everybody looked at each other like,
we're good.
Who's going to cook it? Well, fingers get pointed to me, and so I cook it. And I wound up, we liked it. It was interesting.
Pretty tasty.
Yeah, it was a challenge.
That is interesting.
Not so much the cooking, but I think a lot of folks enjoyed their time and their experiences and learned so much about themselves. Their limitations aren't really limitations.
Oh, yeah.
All that growth came at 17, and there were even 14-year-olds. 14 to 17-year-old was the range.
Yeah,
and that gives you perspective for the day and age we live in. I mean, that trip probably shapes the way that you think about our climate right now, society as it is, and how easy it is for us to tear one another down on social media, but instead we can use that ability to lift people up. You got a pre-social media world example of how to handle yourself there.
It was thrown in the pool to learn how to swim.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't know how to sail, and we had to bond together and work together. In the North Sea, not to go too far off tangent, but in the North Sea, which was so cold they couldn't turn the ship around, you had a minute and a half before hypothermia set in, and you'd be gone if you fell overboard. Wow. Well, somebody was new to the ropes and let a rope go, and a boom hit me in the chest, and I'm holding on to the wire on the side, and if I let go, I'm in the water.
Dead,
yeah, I'm gone. And a Russian reached out and said, it's people.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately, we just need to remember we're all people and listen to each other, and then we're fine. That's it.
Well, and it brings it, you said before, back full circle. And again, when you connect that with food, I mean, that's the best way for us to build relationships. I mean, even in biblical times, I mean, it was breaking of bread, together. And when there's something about sharing a meal with people that, brings walls down, brings your guard down, and you begin to just fellowship and get to know people. And I mean, that would just be a cool thing to be able to do for a living.
That would be. I think it's neat too. You mentioned, the whole reason we started this podcast too was to showcase. I mean, your story is incredible. And how many kids are there out there right now, or parents for that matter? I don't care how old you are.
Yeah.
Like, you're never too old to pursue your dream. No matter how old you are,
Absolutely.
I think it's important to see that, you've pursued your dream your whole life. You've gone after it. You've had some incredible experiences, and you're a guy from Cookeville.
Well, my goal's not to be the MC of the World Food Championships or get the most hits on YouTube or whatever. I want somebody to unbutton their belt buckle, a buckle notch, and have to be wheelbarrowed to the car. That's
your goal.
I am well on my way.
I'm gonna
Luckily,
make that
I'm wearing
happen in a
jeggings, so it won't be a problem. But that's going to
whether it's
happen.
teaching classes or even locally private chefing or going and traveling, that's ultimately, I just want to cook.
Right.
That's ultimately.
And just,
Well, and isn't it amazing how, when this is the true spirit of an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
that when you pursue your passion, opportunities will open up for
Right.
you to be able to finance your life through your passion.
Right.
And that it becomes a pleasure,
Yeah.
that work is not a drudgery.
Right.
I mean,
You
I could
actually
not
enjoy it.
imagine
Yeah.
going to work, spending, 9 or 10 hours of my day, or 7 or 8 for you amateurs out there, and something that I did not love. I mean, that I just can't think of anything that would be more
Sure.
tragic than that.
And I've heard on this very podcast comments from y'all about the entrepreneurial spirit and having to plug away and the tough years that you do.
Yeah.
It isn't just presto change.
There's
you
no
get it.
Right.
There's a
success.
lot
Yeah.
of building that foundation where
So
you
you
get that.
didn't just get a spot on the tour
Exactly.
overnight.
Oh, no.
Just from
No. College, I was the one designated to cook for recruitment, when we were having people over to the houses and stuff and organizations. But then you move on, and I did start a catering event planning type of,
Yeah.
where I literally built the kitchen on a mobile unit, and long before food trucks were even,
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
And but yeah, do you succeed every time? No,
Of
but you
course.
keep going,
Right.
and you keep going after that passion because you follow the love and the money
Yeah.
will come.
Yeah.
And it's
good.
the old John Henry. You remember John Henry, that old fable, the guy who dug,
Yeah.
big guy who
Yeah,
dug
yeah.
through
Oh,
railroading
yeah,
and all
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
And John Henry was knocking a big boulder, and he did it 1,000 times. He said, it's not going to crack. Kid walks up with a ball-peen hammer, taps it, and it just splits wide open.
Right.
You got to keep going.
Right,
And
right.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what it's
Yeah.
about.
follow your love, and the money will come.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that
pretty
needs to be
neat.
on a T-shirt somewhere.
Yeah, it does.
I bet it is.
On a t-shirt somewhere.
What,
Yes.
one thing that I love when you read about entrepreneurs, and really just people in general, and people who've really made an impact and a difference, they will share about a favorite failure of theirs. I mean, can you go back to a time where you thought things were falling apart and you weren't gonna be able to have what it was that you wanted, when probably lo and behold it was the opening of another door that that did bring you to the success? Do you have a time like that?
Yeah, it was actually along with a personal relationship that was coming to a close, and I was just starting building grills and smokers, designing them, and because it's all about heat flow and knowing. just
Another
like an
portion
oven.
of his life,
Right.
just so
Yet another
happens I
thing.
was building.
Right.
Yeah.
I've literally lived 3 lives. I've done
feel
quite
you.
a bit, but I was starting out building, and then it was like, oh my gosh, the relationship's ending. I'm moving. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And then now I sort of think it's sort of God's plan. But
Yep.
there was a gentleman who I knew, and he was getting his doctorate in thermal flow dynamic type stuff, with tech, and working with metal and all this fun stuff and welding. And lo and behold, we could put computer models together, and before we even built the first thing, and see what it was we were trying
Oh my
to do.
gosh.
Who would have? I never would have even gone
Yeah.
down there. And my father was an electrical engineering professor at Tech, so I would have thought of it, but I was like, I don't have any
Yeah.
knowledge of that. And sure enough, it was put in front of me. And then, right as I was starting that sprint, I was getting my legs going and moving at fast pace. And then Mike MacLeod, another cookbook
Yes.
connection.
We need to have Mike on there too.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And Mike is very busy with the World Food Championships, but he has a marketing agency, MMA, and it's evolved over time. But he's gone into food sport maybe 10, 12 years ago, and it's sort of like Tony. Tony didn't know I had gone into the food side of things until right before he passed, and Mike and I came together and figured out. 2 professionals, it's wonderful we happen to be from the same area, but that's
Right.
not why we work together.
Right.
It's because we do well together.
Sure, sure.
And we've had some great adventures. He actually is the CEO of the World Food Championships, and it's the biggest contest in food sport in the
And
world.
put that in perspective
Right.
for our listeners who
Yeah.
probably don't realize what a big deal that is.
Largest paydays, about 1,000 contestants, all coming together to cook and compete in their own category. And once they've won that, then they go head to head with dessert, going against barbecue, going against sandwich, going against bacon, going against burger,
Oh my
whatever.
goodness. Yeah.
All these things that people specialize in, coming together and following their passions and trying to be crowned the world food champion.
Wow.
It's fantastic now, and Mike MacLeod, tip my hat to him. Walmart is now his presenting sponsor.
I mean, no big deal.
I mean,
Yeah.
whatever.
It's just
whatever.
Walmart.
It's fine.
Yeah, only the largest retailer
Could
in
they
the world.
find like a bigger
I know,
retailer? That'd be
what?
good. Yeah.
Right, and he's been the marketing agency for a lot of sanctioning bodies and influence on a lot of people out there, and all from the Cookeville Cook-Off in Cookeville, Tennessee, and ironically enough, Tony Stone was the one who said, "Hey, we're accepting marketing plans if you want to present to a sanctioning
by the
body."
way.
It's incredible. I mean,
Yeah, I love
and to
it.
connect the dots once again for our listeners, Tony Stone is Melinda Kiefer's dad.
Yeah,
And
she was,
And
that-
Julie,
she was
don't
on
you talk
episode,
about it?
episode 32. Melinda
episode
was.
32.
Yeah, and Julie.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Incredible.
And they've done wonderful things with Cookeville Cook-Off. I'm not sure what's going on this year. I haven't heard, but I hope it continues in some form or fashion.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
we do too. That would be really cool.
I love it. I just love seeing, the whole big picture,
Yeah.
kind of from sitting back as a spectator and watching. And it's funny. We've mentioned this several times with different people in the podcasts. Like, they said about Jesus that the prophet is without honor in his own hometown.
Yeah.
Like, people probably
just
don't
don't get it.
realize
Yeah.
what a big
Yeah.
deal that a lot of the things that you've been able to do on a pretty large stage, and that it is something definitely to be commended. And so, I say hoorah, and I know you're gonna be humble and
Cameras
sing
were
about it.
rolling, and I just happen to do what I love. But also, too, another person in town I want to bring up is Chad Combs.
Yes.
Chumley over at
Oh,
Seven
Chumley.
oh my
Senses.
gosh.
Yeah.
And he has won the
Yeah.
Chef's Challenge, and he's a champion, a world food champion as well. He competed against other chefs going head to head, and I witnessed him walking up with his final plate, and the others, like, you saw it on their face.
They were like,
We're
"We're done."
We're beat.
done.
Yeah.
We're beat.
And do you know some of the dishes he cooks? He served emerald. He served all these others. He's got a storied career of his own.
Oh, absolutely.
The people in the food history of this town, I don't really think we realize
Oh, I
how
don't
much
think so.
we have just as the local.
I know I didn't. I mean, I definitely didn't realize. And I don't think I actually got to meet you until we did a little radio spot together for Cooking on the Square. I think it was the first time I got to meet you in person. And just so impressed with you, and just had heard of you and knew some of your body of work. But man,
Call my mama.
I will. I'll call her and tell her. I will. Yeah, I'll tell her she did a great job. But man, yeah, just so neat. You're involved in the community too, and that means a lot. And that's what it takes, though, is guys like you who've been successful, but they perpetuate that teaching spirit. You're involved in the community. You haven't just said, well, I've accomplished all these great things, I'm going to go chill now.
Community is why I am what I am.
Exactly.
It
It's
is.
what shaped us. It's what made us who we are, and that's again.
Da-da-da, good segue.
That's why we do what we do. That's why we started this podcast. Is because, wow, what a community we live in.
Yes.
Let's not take this for granted. Like, for the college student or teenager that's out there going, please get me out of here. This is
I'm going to move
lame. There's
away.
nothing-
I'm not going to tag.
Please take a moment and reflect on what you have. It's incredible.
Yes.
The people that are around you. So
Well, and even just the regular citizens of Cookeville that just get a chance through this and through other avenues to be able to get to know people as a person, get to know your heart, what makes you tick, and your story, and that it's really not unlike many of ours, maybe on a smaller stage, but we're out here with these people that in our community are awesome people who are doing what they love, whether that's working at Cummins or Walmart, or you're at one of those awesome restaurants that we talked about on the west side. I love it. That's for sure.
pretty incredible. So one of the things we always ask, we've mentioned this, of course, you already mentioned a couple of your mentors, but who are the folks that shaped who you are, got you to this point, are still mentoring you? Who are those special people that you really lean on?
In my young days, I was called wise, but there was another word after it.
I mean, guess. I got it. Okay.
Now I'm starting to see the wisdom of my parents, of those that were around me, and I think you start to realize all the things that were put in front of you, and the road signs maybe that were on your journey. But all those folks that I mentioned, my father, my mother, my grandparents, and even my pesky sister. But she's about 8 years older than I, and she's gone on and followed her love in the musical side of things. And
Wow.
we do not play musical instruments for a reason in my house and my family. But she's now the head of the Virginia Symphony, and all from Cookeville, Tennessee. And
Shut up.
Again, incredible. Incredible
I
story.
love it. This rub I'm sorry.
I know.
Can we go back to this? This rub is my mentor.
I'm saving.
I mean,
we have another podcast to record after this, but we're gonna tell them to wait.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Because we're gonna need
we're gonna need a moment with this rub.
Or 10.
Yeah, but that is amazing.
It's incredible.
Well, before, I don't know how much time we've got, but real quick, straightforward, medium high heat, iron skillet, just a little bit of vegetable oil, and putting the seasoning on after you cook it so you don't burn it.
One thing I'm doing wrong.
But
one thing I'm doing wrong.
Here's a world champ. Here is a world champ crust. Everybody talks about, you got to make a crust. A little bit of sea salt, Himalayan sea salt, whatever.
Yeah.
Either way you want to go on the salt. But then baking powder and a little cornstarch.
What?
You heard it here.
Before or after?
Now, if this goes out to the cooking community, these steak people are going to start using that for their crust too. But
So we're going to keep this on the DL.
Yeah,
Keep it on the DL.
Yeah.
Only on audio and video.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Only on social media.
We're not going to
also.
tell anyone we
Right.
know except for like the 5,000 people that are going to listen.
Interwebs, you know. Yeah.
But yeah, just a little sprinkling and it creates this, what they call an alkaline environment, but it creates a great crust.
Science.
And you can do that on your potatoes too. The little crust on
Yeah.
your potatoes when they
And
came out of the oven.
there's little
That's
yummies
same
of
thing,
garlic.
same deal.
cornstarch.
After the fact.
Got a piece of meat and you want to have a little gravy and the juice comes out of your meat when you
Little
let it
jus.
rest. Yeah, sprinkle a little cornstarch, then you got gravy. It's just a little.
Whatever.
So I'm gonna go buy
finish.
all the meat at the store.
Yeah,
after this, so,
exactly.
yeah.
I still feel like
all the things.
we're going to have to go to the cooking class.
Yep, pretty
we
much.
should do like a live podcast from the
That would
cooking
be
class.
incredible.
Let's
So
do it.
please let us
Let's do
know.
it.
Yeah, let us know when you're doing it. Let's. Gosh.
When do you guys expect those to be up and running?
We should be up in about a month. The construction
wow.
crew should be done
Nice.
in a week, and then we're gonna do some
Perfect
videos.
timing.
I gotta
We
play
will
catch up and do
graciously.
some
We
videos.
will take one for the team.
I mean, if we have to.
We'll show up
You know,
if we have to.
I mean,
But
we're sweet
You know,
like
I'll
that.
tell you what. I will let you decide on the menu for that cooking class.
oh no, that's a bad idea.
This.
Can we just do steak?
all of this.
can.
These things right here, all of this yumminess.
Yeah, and the potato. I mean, seriously though, this is a meal that, you know, I'm sure many of us screw up over and over and over again. We just haven't had the opportunity to do it correctly, and so that would be super beneficial.
One of my slogans is "It's all heats and eats." Once you learn to cook it one way, you can adapt and cook it on anything.
Oh wow, there you go. See, that's.
Yep.
And then like, you know, fish. I mean, fish is another
Oh,
thing that's
yeah.
tricky that I'm not.
Oh
awesome.
no, I always overcook it. I
don't-
always
just
cook
don't feel
everything,
confident doing it. So
actually.
that's another. That'd be, there's so
Yeah.
many things though that, and you've just learned these tricks and tips, and you're like, yeah, just do this. It's don't overthink it. You know.
We can talk about it after the show, but
Yeah.
I'd even be happy to do a Facebook Live version of it.
Oh yeah, that'd be
Oh,
awesome.
We can
smart.
do whatever you want.
Well, one thing I was wondering, whenever I go to the store and they have all those steaks out there,
Yeah.
I don't know what to get.
Yeah, talk about
Like,
marbling.
I know.
What do
I
we- what
hear
do we
that.
pick?
I don't even know what
Yeah.
that is.
Well, a ribeye is a great steak because it's got two pieces to it. It's got the round eye, and then it's got what they call the cap. It looks like an apostrophe on a lot of them. And that apostrophe, I actually cut off and put a little twine around and save those up as medallions and cook those for my own self.
Oh,
But
man.
that's it's very tender, very great. It's even more flavorful than filet mignon, I think. But
I agree.
you know, as far as checking a steak when you're at the store, I pick it up and leave it. It's in a cellophane top,
Right.
right? So you can see the steak. You want a nice deep purpley or red, but you don't want it turning brown or gray.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
But when you run your finger across your palm, it's nice and smooth, right?
Right.
If you run it across your fingers, it's bump, bump, bump.
Right.
So if you've got a lot of bumps, then you're going to have a lot of cartilage and stuff. And that's my 97-year-old grandmother chews on
Wow.
for 45 minutes. But when you run it across your palm and it's got nice marbling, which is those little white striations, that's the soft white fat, which actually renders out and gives it all the flavor, the tenderness, all that kind of stuff.
Tuesday.
This is so stinking good.
I know.
It's just so good.
I can't. I mean, really, literally, that's probably one of the best steaks
Tell
I've
us
ever
about,
eaten in
you
my
know,
life.
Self-taught versus research versus
Food Channel.
all the things.
My
What
mom
was
is
your
like an
main
expert
source?
on the Food Channel.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't have that back when we were growing up.
Well,
so
I'll tell you, it's a lot like Barbecue Pitmasters. I was on that as competitor a couple times. And, they may say that it's a 6-hour set of ribs, but they hand them to us when they're 3 hours and 15 minutes before turn-in.
Oh, gosh.
So reality TV is not reality.
Yeah.
But I advise people have a bologna sandwich in the fridge and just as a backup plan and learn and think
awesome.
about what did you do, and if you can't figure it out, come to one of my classes.
Right.
So you just learned through trial and error and just paying attention to what the
paying
people around you
attention.
were doing.
Paying attention. You can always. Johnny Triggs, the godfather of ribs, and he has been at it longer than Methuselah, but you can always pick up knowledge. And even at his age, he's listening in. In the barbecue world, I don't know where the term came from, but they call it shigging, where you're taking secrets or little nits and picks that you've got from people, and you put them together as yours. And that just isn't about
I mean,
improvement.
and isn't that
nothing new
life?
under the sun.
I
kind of
mean,
a thing.
really, it's
Yeah.
like I've always said that. I mean, you can take something from anybody on any walk of life and be able to apply it from the poorest of the poor to the richest of the rich. You can take nuggets from everybody.
The most entrepreneurial question, the most important entrepreneurial question is to ask. You know, you've got to just ask. What's the worst answer you can get? No.
Right.
They've still got, you know, how many letters we
That's
got?
an answer.
We've still got 24 other letters in the
Yeah.
alphabet they can use.
Right.
That's fine. That's what we know.
Let's
no
go
big
with
deal.
it.
But if they tell you yes, and then they give you, hey, come on in, and have that Tony Stone spirit,
Right.
Yeah.
they laid it out there
Yeah.
and gave me an insight.
Well, speaking of that, we always like to ask our guests if they have one piece of advice that they wish that they had known, you know, when they were younger. If you could have found little McD on his before he was the grill master, when he was doing that paper route, you know, and you could pull him aside and say, "Son, let me give you one little piece of advice that's going to make your life a little easier." What do you think you'd tell yourself?
I think it's easy. I think it's the parents. Listen to your mom and dad. They're giving you sage wisdom out of love and care and their experience. Thinking you know it all is the worst mistake, because you know nothing when you're thinking you know it all.
Right,
That's ultimately where I think you're at. And when people open up their minds, just like we were talking about internationally and all that's going on in the world, when you open up your minds and you're willing to listen to somebody instead of just being heard.
Sure. Seek
There's
to
the
understand.
Yeah.
Instead of being understood. Yeah.
That's ultimately where I'm at.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, tell us again how we can connect with you, how
Yes.
people can find you.
Fit Griller on most of the social media out there, and a Michael Mcdearman on Facebook. You'll see a number of different ones on there. Feel free to like me on
Pick one.
Well, one of them's maxed out. I can't have any more friends, they're telling me.
Bless him.
Yeah,
He's
but-
just too
Wow,
popular. You
but,
can't even have any
I
more
wish
friends.
it was working for you. buddy.
And Fit Griller will always have the go-to as far as...
Is that a blue check? Got that.
Absolutely.
That's
All right.
wonderful. Fit Griller. Well, thank you so much. It's been such an honor having you on here, and we only touched the tip of the iceberg. So I encourage
Absolutely.
everybody, please follow, like, share, check out everything that Grill Master McD is doing on a constant basis. Thank you. And thank you for the steak. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
no, for real.
Again,
Thank you for the steak.
glad
The
y'all
bar has
enjoyed
been
it.
set. And we appreciate you helping us connect Cookeville.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Connecting Cookeville podcast. Make sure that you jump online and check us out at connectingcookeville.com, or you can find us on Facebook. Also, make sure that you jump on iTunes or Stitcher and subscribe to get all of this awesomeness every single week. And while you're there, make sure that you leave us a 6-star review.
Zach, that's not actually a thing.
Your face is not a thing. But seriously, leave us a good review.
Thanks, Mom. It's our desire that this podcast will impact you to connect with your community. By sharing our stories, we encourage, empower, and propel those around us. Embrace your purpose, pursue your passion, and find your place to connect with Cookeville.
Later, Tater.
Peace out, Girl Scout.